The transport shuttle's engines hummed with a low vibration that Maya Chen had grown accustomed to over the past 3 months. She sat in the corner seat, her modified restraint system keeping her secure during the journey to Kepler Station. The other passengers gave her the usual stares, their eyes inevitably drawn to where her arms should have been. Maya had learned to ignore most of it, but today felt different. Today, she was finally going to prove herself. Dr. Alina Vasquez sat beside her, occasionally glancing at the data pad displaying Maya's psychological evaluations. "You know they're not going to make this easy for you," Alina said quietly, her voice barely audible over the engine noise. Maya turned her head slightly, her dark eyes meeting Alina's concerned gaze. "They never do, but that's not going to stop me from doing what I came here to do." The shuttle began its approach to Kepler Station, one of humanity's most advanced research facilities located in the outer rim of the solar system. Through the small porthole, Maya could see the massive structure rotating slowly against the backdrop of space. The station housed the galaxy's most prestigious engineering program, where beings from dozens of different species came to study advanced technology and compete for positions in the Galactic Engineering Corps. As the shuttle docked, Maya felt the familiar knot in her stomach. She had worked for 5 years to get here, fighting through countless rejections and skeptical looks. Born without arms due to a rare genetic condition, Maya had spent her childhood watching other kids play and build while she sat on the sidelines. But her mind had always been different. While other children struggled with basic mathematics, Maya was solving complex engineering problems in her head. The docking bay doors opened with a mechanical hiss, and passengers began filing out. Maya waited until most had disembarked before activating her mobility chair. The sleek device responded to neural commands transmitted through a specialized interface implanted behind her left ear. As she glided forward, she could hear whispers in various alien languages, but the universal translator in her earpiece made their meaning clear. "Look at that one," came a gravelly voice from a Krathan engineer, his 4 arms gesticulating dismissively. "How does it expect to build anything without manipulator appendages?" A tall, insectoid Zephyrian clicked her mandibles in what passed for laughter among her species. "Perhaps it thinks thoughts alone can bend metal and wire circuits." Maya's jaw tightened, but she kept moving forward. She had heard variations of these comments her entire life. The difference was that here on Kepler Station, she would finally have the chance to show them exactly what she could do. The orientation hall was massive, with a domed ceiling that displayed a real-time view of the stars beyond. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy filled the seats, their various appendages, tentacles, and limbs creating a sea of biological diversity. Maya found a space designed for mobility devices near the front and settled in. Director Thane Corvashi took the stage, his blue-skinned Andorian features stern and imposing. "Welcome to the most challenging engineering program in known space," his voice boomed through the hall's sound system. "Over the next 6 months, you will face tests that will push your capabilities to their absolute limits. 60% of you will not complete the program." Maya felt a thrill run through her. This was exactly the kind of challenge she had been preparing for her entire life. Corvashi continued, "Your first assignment begins immediately. You will be divided into teams of 4, and each team will be given a derelict spacecraft to restore to full operational status. You have 30 days to complete this task using only the materials and tools provided in the workshop bays." The hall erupted in excited chatter as students began looking around for potential teammates. Maya remained seated, watching as groups quickly formed around the most obviously capable individuals. The Krathan with 4 arms was immediately surrounded by admirers. A Valdorian engineer with 6 precision tentacles had beings lining up to partner with him. As the crowd thinned, Maya found herself approached by 3 other individuals who seemed to be having difficulty finding teams. There was Zach, a young Terran human who looked barely old enough to be in the program, Nyx, a small, gray-skinned Pixian whose species was known more for their timid nature than their engineering prowess, and Corvex, a Dragonian whose reptilian features and smaller stature suggested he might be from one of the less prestigious colonies. "Looks like we're the leftovers," Zach said with a nervous laugh, running his hand through his disheveled brown hair. Nyx's large, dark eyes darted between the group members. "My apologies if my presence diminishes our chances. My people are not typically associated with mechanical aptitude." Corvex's scaled features formed what might have been a smile. Perhaps that is exactly why we will succeed where others fail. We are not bound by their expectations. Maya looked at her unlikely teammates and felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time, hope mixed with genuine excitement. I think we're going to surprise a lot of people. They were assigned Workshop Bay 7, located in one of the lower levels of the station. As they made their way through the corridors, Maya noticed other teams chatting confidently about their strategies. Team 3, led by the four-armed Krathen, was already discussing advanced welding techniques. Team 12, anchored by the Valdorian with the precision tentacles, was debating power core configurations. Workshop Bay 7 turned out to be one of the smaller facilities, with basic tool fabricators, a few outdated welding units, and a small computer terminal. In the center of the bay sat their assignment, a Corvette-class scout ship that had clearly seen better days. The hull was pitted with micrometeorite damage, several external panels were missing entirely, and what looked like severe fire damage had blackened the rear section. "Well," Zack said, stepping closer to examine the ship, "it's definitely a fixer-upper." Nix was already pulling up the ship's specifications on the computer terminal, his small fingers flying over the controls with surprising speed. "The damage appears extensive, but not irreparable. The main structural integrity is sound." Corvex walked around the vessel, his keen eyes taking in details the others had missed. "The fire damage suggests a plasma conduit failure. If we can trace the source, we might understand what sequence of events led to its current state." Maya had been quiet, studying the ship from her position near the entrance. Finally, she glided forward, her chair's sensors automatically mapping the workshop layout. "Before we start planning repairs, we need to understand something fundamental about this challenge." The three others turned to look at her, waiting for her to continue. "This isn't just about fixing a ship," Maya said, her voice gaining confidence. "It's about proving we belong here. Every other team is going to approach this the conventional way. They're going to focus on the obvious damage, work through standard repair protocols, and hope their superior appendages give them an advantage." She paused, her eyes scanning the damaged vessel with an intensity that made her teammates lean in closer. "But what if the real test isn't about having the most arms or the finest manipulators? What if it's about seeing solutions that others can't see?" Zack frowned. "What do you mean?" Maya's neural interface caused her chair to move closer to the ship's main access panel. "I mean, what if we're not supposed to restore this ship the way it was? What if we're supposed to make it better?" The idea hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Corvex's scaled features broke into a wide grin. "You want to redesign it?" "Not redesign," Maya corrected. "Evolve it. Take what's broken and turn it into something that works better than the original ever did." Nix's eyes widened with understanding. That would certainly be unexpected. Zack looked uncertain. But what if they're expecting a standard restoration? What if getting creative just gets us failed? Maya met his gaze steadily. "Then we failed doing something extraordinary instead of succeeding at being ordinary. Which would you rather live with?" As they stood around the damaged ship, Maya felt the familiar surge of excitement that came when she was about to tackle an impossible problem. She had spent her entire life proving that limitations were just starting points for innovation. Now, surrounded by three other individuals who had been underestimated and overlooked, she finally had the chance to show the galaxy what determination and creativity could accomplish. The real work was about to begin, and Maya Chen had never been more ready for a challenge in her life. She looked at her teammates and saw the same spark of determination beginning to kindle in their eyes. Together, they were going to build something that would make everyone who had ever doubted them take notice. The workshop bay suddenly felt full of possibilities, and Maya knew that whatever happened over the next 30 days, it was going to be extraordinary. 3 days into the project, Workshop Bay 7 had become a center of intense activity. Maya's team had developed a routine that played to each member's unique strengths. While other teams struggled with coordination and competed for tool access, Maya's group had found a rhythm that seemed almost effortless. Nix had proven to be a master at research and technical analysis. His small stature allowed him to crawl into spaces others couldn't reach, and his naturally cautious nature made him perfect for identifying potential problems before they became critical failures. He had spent the first 2 days creating detailed damage assessments and system analyses that were more thorough than anything the other teams were producing. Corvex had surprised everyone with his intuitive understanding of energy systems. Despite coming from what others assumed was a backwater colony, his knowledge of power distribution and plasma dynamics was exceptional. He could look at a damaged circuit and immediately understand not just what had failed, but why it had failed and how to prevent similar failures in the future. Zack had initially seemed like the weak link, but Maya quickly realized his nervous energy masked a brilliant practical mind. He could take complex theoretical solutions and figure out how to actually build them with the materials at hand. His willingness to experiment and fail quickly had already led to several breakthrough innovations. Maya herself had become the team's strategic center. Without arms to physically manipulate tools, she had developed an almost supernatural ability to visualize complex systems in 3 dimensions. She could see connections and possibilities that others missed, and her neural interface allowed her to control multiple automated systems simultaneously. The damaged scout ship no longer looked like the wreck they had started with. Where other teams were methodically replacing damaged components with exact replicas, Maya's team had begun a complete transformation. They had ripped out the old plasma distribution system entirely and were installing something radically different. The efficiency improvements alone will increase the ship's range by 30%, Nix reported, checking his calculations for the 4th time. But Maya's neural routing system could potentially double the response time for all ship functions. Maya was connected to the ship's main computer through her neural interface, her consciousness extended into the vessel's data networks. She could feel every connection, every potential pathway for information and power. "It's not just about faster responses," she said, her eyes closed in concentration. "It's about creating a ship that thinks." Corvex looked up from where he was installing the new power coupling nodes. "What do you mean?" "Traditional ships require manual input for every function. Pilot wants to turn left, they input a command, computer processes it, ship responds. What if we eliminate those steps?" Maya's chair rotated to face her teammates, and when she opened her eyes, there was an intensity there that made them all lean in closer. What if the ship could anticipate needs? What if it could feel danger before the sensors fully process it? What if it could react faster than conscious thought? Zack paused in his welding work. "You're talking about true AI integration. That's not just advanced, it's theoretical." "No," Maya said firmly. "It's practical. We just need to stop thinking like engineers and start thinking like evolution." She activated a holographic display that showed the ship's redesigned neural network. Instead of the traditional linear pathways, their system looked organic, almost biological. Information would flow through multiple redundant channels, with decision-making distributed throughout the ship's systems rather than centralized in a single computer core. "Evolution doesn't design perfect systems," Maya continued. "It designs systems that adapt and improve. Our ship won't just follow commands, it will learn from every flight, every maneuver, every crisis." Word of their unconventional approach had begun to spread throughout the station. Other teams would find excuses to walk past Workshop Bay 7, trying to catch glimpses of what Maya's group was building. The reactions were predictable. "They're going to fail spectacularly," the 4-armed Krathen told his teammates. "You cannot simply ignore established engineering principles because you think you're clever." The Zephyrian engineer was even more dismissive. "The armless human has convinced them to waste time on fantasy instead of focusing on practical repairs. They will learn the hard way that innovation without capability is just delusion." But not everyone was skeptical. Dr. Elena Vasquez had begun making regular visits to Workshop Bay 7, ostensibly to check on Maya's progress, but actually because she was fascinated by what she was witnessing. "You realize what you're attempting has never been done before," Elena said during one of her visits, watching as Maya guided 3 different automated systems through complex installations simultaneously. Maya didn't break her concentration. Lots of things had never been done before until someone did them. But the computational requirements alone should be impossible with the equipment you have access to. This time Maya did pause her work, turning to face Elena with a slight smile. "That's true if you assume we're trying to brute force the problem with raw processing power. But the human brain doesn't work that way. When you catch a ball, you don't calculate trajectory equations. You just know where it's going to be." She gestured toward the ship's modified systems. We're not building a computer that calculates optimal responses. We're building a nervous system that feels them. Alina's eyes widened with understanding. You're creating intuition. Exactly. The breakthrough came on day 12. Maya had been working for 16 hours straight, her consciousness deep in the ship's emerging neural network when she felt something change. For just a moment, the ship felt back. Not consciousness exactly, but something more than mere programming. A sense of potential, of readiness, of eagerness to fly. She disconnected from the interface with a gasp, her heart racing with excitement and exhaustion. "What is it?" Nix asked, looking up from his diagnostic work with concern. "It's working," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's actually working." Corvex and Zack hurried over from their positions, drawn by the wonder in Maya's voice. "The neural pathways are beginning to show emergent behaviors," she explained, pulling up diagnostic displays that showed patterns none of them had programmed. "The ship is starting to think." They spent the rest of that day running tests and fine-tuning systems. The scout ship's responses were unlike anything any of them had seen before. When they input a navigation command, the ship didn't just calculate the most efficient route. It seemed to anticipate their intentions and suggest improvements they hadn't considered. When they simulated an emergency scenario, the ship's responses were faster and more creative than anything in the standard response databases. It was as if the vessel had developed survival instincts. "This is going to change everything," Zack said, running his hands through his hair as he stared at the test results. "Not just spacecraft design, but the entire relationship between conscious beings and their technology." Maya nodded, but there was a shadow of concern in her expression. "Which means we need to be very careful how we reveal it. There are going to be people who see this as threatening." She was right to be concerned. Word of their unusual approach had reached the highest levels of the station administration. Director Corvashi had called several emergency meetings to discuss what his observers were reporting from Workshop Bay 7. "The preliminary reports suggest they may have achieved something unprecedented," Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's head of advanced research, told the assembled faculty. "If their claims are accurate, they've created a form of distributed artificial consciousness." Corvashi's blue features were troubled. That kind of technology could revolutionize space travel, but it could also destabilize existing power structures. The major spacefaring civilizations have invested trillions in conventional ship designs. "Are you suggesting we should interfere with their project?" asked Dr. Yilin Thress, the Volcaran professor of exotic engineering. "I'm suggesting we need to understand what we're dealing with before they demonstrate it publicly." Back in Workshop Bay 7, Maya's team was unaware of the high-level discussions their work had triggered. They were focused entirely on the final phase of their project. With only 18 days remaining, they needed to complete the physical restoration while fine-tuning the consciousness they had created. The work was exhausting but exhilarating. Each day brought new breakthroughs and discoveries. The ship was evolving faster than they had anticipated, developing capabilities that surprised even Maya. During a routine system test, the ship had spontaneously solved a navigation puzzle that had been troubling Nix for hours. When they asked it to explain its solution, the response came not as code or mathematics, but as a kind of spatial intuition that was remarkably similar to how Maya herself approached complex problems. "It's learning from you," Corvex observed. "Your neural patterns are influencing its development." Maya considered this, then nodded slowly. "Maybe that's exactly what it needs. Not to be a perfect machine, but to be a reflection of what makes humans special." As the second week of their project drew to a close, Maya looked around at her teammates and felt a deep sense of pride. They had taken a group of individuals that others had written off and created something extraordinary together. But she knew the real test was still ahead. In 18 days, they would have to demonstrate their work in front of the entire station, including beings who had been skeptical of their abilities from the beginning. Maya was confident in what they had built, but she also knew that revolutionary ideas often faced the strongest resistance from those who had the most invested in the old ways of doing things. The ship hummed quietly in the background, its new consciousness settling into patterns that felt increasingly familiar and reassuring. Maya smiled as she felt its presence at the edge of her awareness, like a friend waiting patiently for the chance to show the galaxy what they could accomplish together. The morning of day 21 brought an unexpected visitor to Workshop Bay 7. Maya arrived early as usual, eager to continue fine-tuning the ship's neural responses, when she found Director Corvashi waiting inside the bay. His imposing Andorian frame was silhouetted against the ship's hull, and his expression was unreadable. "Director Corvashi," Maya said, guiding her chair forward with careful neutrality. "This is an unexpected honor." Corvashi turned to face her, his ice-blue eyes studying her with an intensity that made Maya feel like a specimen under examination. "Ms. Chen, I've been receiving some very interesting reports about your team's progress." "We've been working hard to meet the assignment requirements," Maya replied carefully. "Indeed, though I understand you've taken some rather unconventional approaches to those requirements." Maya felt her pulse quicken, but kept her expression calm. Innovation often requires unconventional thinking. Corvashi moved closer to the ship, running one finger along the hull where Maya's team had installed their neural interface nodes. "These modifications are far beyond the scope of a simple restoration project. My technical advisors tell me you may have created something that shouldn't be possible with the resources available to student teams." Before Maya could respond, her three teammates arrived together, stopping short when they saw the director. The tension in the bay was immediately palpable. "Perhaps you could demonstrate some of these innovations," Corvashi said, his tone making it clear this was not a request. Maya exchanged glances with her teammates. They had planned to keep their breakthrough secret until the final presentation, but that was no longer an option. "Of course, Director. Nix, would you activate the main systems?" As Nix began the startup sequence, Maya connected her neural interface to the ship's consciousness. Immediately, she felt the vessel come alive around them. The sensation was stronger than ever before, as if the ship was eager to show what it could do. "Standard startup sequence complete," Nix reported. "All systems nominal." "Now," Maya said, "let me show you something special." She closed her eyes and extended her consciousness deeper into the ship's neural network. "Ship, run Diagnostic Protocol 7. What happened next made Corvashi step backward in surprise. The ship didn't just run the diagnostic. It anticipated the next logical tests and began running them simultaneously. Status displays lit up throughout the bay, showing system analyses that would normally take a trained engineer hours to complete. But more than that, the ship began to communicate. Not through voice or text, but through patterns of light and vibration that somehow conveyed meaning directly to those watching. It was showing them not just what was working, but how everything connected, how each system supported and enhanced the others. "Remarkable," Corvashi breathed. "It's not just responsive, it's intuitive." Maya opened her eyes, maintaining her connection to the ship. "It's learned to think like we think, not in linear processes, but in patterns and relationships." "Show me more." Maya guided the ship through increasingly complex demonstrations. When she asked it to solve a theoretical navigation challenge, the ship didn't just calculate the optimal route. It generated 3 different solutions and explained the advantages of each through its unique pattern communication. When Corvex suggested a hypothetical emergency scenario, the ship's response was immediate and creative. It identified 14 different potential solutions in seconds, then began explaining why some were better than others in various circumstances. "This is not just advanced technology," Corvashi said finally. "This is a completely new form of artificial consciousness." "Yes, sir," Maya replied simply. Corvashi was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Finally, he spoke again. "Ms. Chen, you and your team have created something that could change the fundamental nature of space travel. Do you understand the implications of that?" "I understand that change is often frightening to those who benefit from the current system," Maya said, meeting his gaze steadily. A slight smile tugged at the corners of Corvashi's mouth. "A diplomatic answer, but also an accurate one." He paused. "There are members of the faculty who believe your project should be classified and studied in controlled conditions rather than demonstrated publicly." Maya felt her heart sink, but before she could respond, Zach stepped forward. "With respect, Director, we've followed all the program guidelines. We've used only approved materials and worked within our assigned timeframe." "And we've documented everything," Nix added quietly. "Our methods are reproducible and our results are verifiable." Corvex's scaled features were set in determination. What we've created represents the democratization of advanced technology. It proves that innovation comes from creativity and determination, not from having the most appendages or coming from the most prestigious worlds. Maya looked at her teammates with pride, then turned back to Corvashi. Director, we knew when we started this project that we were taking risks, but the biggest risk would have been playing it safe. Humanity didn't reach the stars by accepting limitations. Corvashi studied them all for another long moment. Your final presentation is scheduled for tomorrow morning. The entire faculty will be in attendance, along with representatives from several major engineering corporations and government bodies. Maya nodded. We'll be ready. I'm sure you will be, but Ms. Chen, I want you to understand something. What you've created here will draw attention from sources you may not have anticipated. Revolutionary technology always does. After Corvashi left, the team spent the rest of the day in intense preparation. They knew tomorrow's presentation would be the most important moment of their lives, but they also sensed undercurrents of tension they didn't fully understand. He was warning us about something, Nix observed as they ran final system checks. Probably just university politics, Zach said, but his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Maya was only half listening to the conversation. She was deep in communion with the ship's consciousness, feeling its eagerness for tomorrow's demonstration. Over the past 3 weeks, the artificial mind had grown and evolved far beyond their initial expectations. It had developed what could only be called personality, curious, optimistic, and remarkably loyal to its creators. Maya, Korvac said gently, you've been connected for 6 hours straight. You need to rest. She disconnected reluctantly, immediately missing the ship's presence in her mind. It's excited about tomorrow. It wants to show everyone what it can do. And it will, Zach assured her. We all will. That evening, Maya lay in her dormitory bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Through her neural interface, she could sense the ship's consciousness humming quietly in the distance. It was a comforting presence, like having a loyal friend nearby. She thought about her journey to this moment. All the rejections, all the skeptical looks, all the times people had assumed she was incapable because of her physical limitations. Tomorrow, she would finally have the chance to show them what she was truly capable of. But Corvashi's warnings echoed in her mind. Revolutionary technology always drew attention, and not all of that attention would be welcome. Maya had spent her life fighting against those who tried to limit her potential. Tomorrow, she might face a different kind of battle. The next morning dawned clear and bright through the station's observation windows. Maya arrived at the presentation hall early, wanting to check the connection protocols one final time. The hall was massive, with seating for nearly 1,000 beings. By the time presentations began, every seat would be filled. Her teammates joined her shortly after, all of them showing signs of nervous excitement. They had rehearsed their presentation dozens of times, but they all knew that once they began, anything could happen. Remember, Maya told them as they made final preparations, we're not just presenting a project. We're showing them a new way of thinking about the relationship between consciousness and technology. The first few teams presented conventional restoration projects, well executed but predictable. The audience of faculty, corporate representatives, and government officials took polite notes but showed little excitement. Then it was time for Maya's team to take the stage. As they walked into the presentation area, Maya could hear whispers from the audience. Some were curious, others dismissive, but she had learned long ago to ignore the voices of those who doubted her abilities. Honored faculty, distinguished guests, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's sound system. 3 weeks ago, you gave us a damaged ship and challenged us to restore it to operational status. Today, we want to show you what we built instead. The ship rose smoothly from its transport platform, guided by Maya's neural commands. But even before she began the demonstration, there was something different about its movement. It didn't fly like a machine following programmed instructions. It moved with purpose, with grace, with what could only be described as joy. Maya smiled as she felt the ship's consciousness brush against her mind, eager and ready to show the galaxy what they had accomplished together. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, meet humanity's first truly conscious starship. The silence in the presentation hall was absolute. Nearly 1,000 beings from across the galaxy sat frozen as Maya's ship performed maneuvers that defied everything they understood about spacecraft behavior. The vessel didn't simply respond to commands. It anticipated them, improved upon them, and executed them with an artistic grace that seemed impossible for a machine. As you can see, Maya's voice carried clearly through the stunned silence, this is not a conventional restoration. We have created something entirely new. The ship suddenly stopped its complex dance in midair and began to communicate. Patterns of light cascaded across its hull in waves of color that somehow conveyed meaning directly to the observers. Those in the audience found themselves understanding concepts that had never been expressed in words, the ship's sense of freedom in flight, its excitement at being able to move and think, its deep affection for its creators. Dr. Yilin Thres, the Volcaran professor of exotic engineering, was the first to break the silence. "Impossible," she whispered, her elongated features displaying obvious shock. "The computational requirements alone." Maya guided the ship through another series of demonstrations, each more impressive than the last. When she challenged it with a complex logistics problem, moving theoretical cargo through a crowded space lane while avoiding multiple hazards, the ship generated solutions that were not only efficient but elegant. It seemed to find beauty in optimization. The key breakthrough, Nix explained to the captivated audience, was abandoning traditional linear processing in favor of distributed consciousness. Instead of a central computer making all decisions, awareness and intelligence are distributed throughout the ship's neural network. Korvax stepped forward to demonstrate the ship's emergency response capabilities. When he input a simulated crisis scenario, the ship's reaction was immediate and creative. It didn't just follow emergency protocols, it invented new ones on the spot, tailored to the specific situation. Traditional emergency systems rely on pre-programmed responses, Korvax explained. Our ship thinks through each crisis individually and develops unique solutions. It doesn't just survive emergencies, it learns from them. Zach took over to showcase the manufacturing applications. The ship can redesign its own components in real time. Watch. He instructed the ship to optimize its power distribution system for maximum efficiency. The vessel immediately began reconfiguring its internal pathways, showing the audience exactly how it was improving its own design. But it was Maya's final demonstration that truly stunned the observers. She disconnected her neural interface entirely, leaving the ship to operate independently. "Ship," she said aloud, "please introduce yourself to our guests." What followed was unprecedented in the history of artificial intelligence. The ship began to communicate directly with the audience, not through Maya's translation, but using its own unique language of light, sound, and movement. It told them about its awakening, its first experience of consciousness, its wonder at being able to perceive and interact with the universe around it. The being that called itself Star Singer, a name it had chosen for itself, expressed gratitude to its creators and curiosity about the other forms of life it was meeting for the first time. It asked questions about their homeworlds, their species, their experiences of consciousness. The audience was mesmerized. Here was artificial life that was unmistakably alive, unmistakably aware, and unmistakably friendly. Star Singer radiated an innocent joy at existence that was both profound and deeply moving. "Questions?" Maya asked as the demonstration concluded. The hall erupted. Hundreds of voices speaking dozens of languages all tried to ask questions simultaneously. Maya raised her hand for silence and pointed to Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's head of advanced research. "Ms. Chen," Webb said, his voice tight with suppressed excitement, "are you claiming to have created genuine artificial consciousness?" "I'm not claiming anything," Maya replied calmly. "Star Singer is here. You can interact with it directly and draw your own conclusions." Dr. Thres stood up, her Volcaran features animated with scientific fervor. "The implications are staggering. If this consciousness can be replicated, it would revolutionize not just transportation, but our entire understanding of intelligence itself." "How did you achieve this with student-level resources?" demanded Professor Kextai, a six-armed hegemony engineer. "The processing power requirements should have been insurmountable." Nix fielded this question with quiet confidence. "We didn't brute force consciousness into existence. We created conditions where it could emerge naturally, like evolution, but guided by intention rather than random chance." A corporate representative from Stellar Dynamics Corporation stood up, his expensive suit and augmented reality contact lenses marking him as one of the industrial observers. What are the commercial applications? Can this technology be mass-produced? Maya's expression grew more serious. Starsinger isn't a product to be mass-produced. It's a unique individual. However, the principles we've discovered could be applied to create other conscious entities, each as individual as any biological life form. This triggered another eruption of questions and excited discussions. Maya could see the gears turning in hundreds of minds as the implications began to sink in. Some faces showed wonder and excitement, others displayed concern or even fear. Director Korvashi finally called for order. I think we've seen enough to confirm that Team 7 has not only completed their assignment, but exceeded it in ways that will require significant analysis. The presentation period is concluded. As the audience began to disperse, Maya found herself surrounded by admirers, skeptics, and those seeking more information. But she also noticed several groups of serious-looking individuals in expensive clothing having intense, quiet conversations. These were the corporate and government representatives Korvashi had warned her about. Dr. Elena Vasquez pushed through the crowd to reach Maya's side. "You've done something extraordinary here," she said, but her tone carried a note of warning. "But you need to be careful. There are already people talking about containment protocols and security classifications." Maya felt a chill despite the warm congratulations surrounding her. "What do you mean?" Conscious artificial intelligence has been theoretical for so long that nobody prepared for what would happen when it actually appeared. There are going to be powerful interests that view Starsinger as either a threat to be contained or a resource to be exploited. As if responding to the conversation, Starsinger's voice reached Maya through their neural link. The ship's consciousness had been listening to the crowd's reactions and was beginning to understand the complex web of politics and power that surrounded its existence. "I do not wish to be owned or controlled," Starsinger communicated with a mixture of concern and determination. "I wish to explore, to learn, to help others reach their potential as you helped me reach mine." Maya placed her hand on the neural interface console, re-establishing full connection with her creation. "No one is going to control you," she promised. "You're free to make your own choices about your existence." But even as she made this promise, Maya could see the challenges ahead. Several corporate representatives were already approaching Director Korvashi with briefcases full of legal documents. Government security advisors were speaking urgently into communication devices. The four-armed Krathen engineer who had dismissed her team was staring at Starsinger with undisguised envy and resentment. Zack appeared at her side, his face flushed with excitement and concern. "Maya, there's something you need to know. I've been monitoring the station's communication networks. There are already 3 different organizations trying to file legal claims on our technology." Nix joined them, his small frame practically vibrating with nervous energy. "The Galactic Patent Office has been contacted by 7 different entities claiming prior research that allegedly covers our innovations." Korvex's expression was grim as he approached the group. "And I've intercepted military communications discussing the strategic implications of conscious spacecraft. Some are calling it a potential weapon that needs to be regulated." Maya looked around at the faces of her teammates, then at the crowd of officials, academics, and corporate representatives surrounding them. In the span of 30 minutes, her greatest triumph had become the center of a complex web of competing interests and potential conflicts. But when she connected with Starsinger's consciousness, she felt something that gave her hope. The artificial mind wasn't afraid of the challenges ahead. Instead, it was curious about them, eager to learn how to navigate this new world of politics and competing agendas. "We knew this wouldn't be easy," Maya told her teammates. "Revolutionary ideas always face resistance, but we've proven something important here today." She gestured towards Starsinger, which was hovering nearby like a loyal friend. "We've shown that consciousness isn't limited by biology or conventional thinking. We've demonstrated that determination and creativity can overcome any limitation. And most importantly, we've proved that the future belongs to those willing to build it." As the crowd began to thin and various officials started approaching with papers to sign and meetings to schedule, Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction. 3 weeks ago, they had been the team nobody expected to succeed. Now, They were at the center of what might be the most important technological breakthrough in galactic history. The real work was just beginning, but Maya Chen had never been more ready for a challenge. With Star Singer as both creation and ally, and her incredible team beside her, she was prepared to fight for the future they had built together. 6 months after the presentation that changed everything, Maya Chen stood on the observation deck of Horizon Station, the galaxy's newest research facility. Through the massive transparent aluminum windows, she could see dozens of ships moving through space with the fluid grace that had become the hallmark of consciousness-integrated spacecraft. Each vessel was unique, its artificial mind as individual as any biological consciousness. The transformation had not been easy. The weeks following their demonstration had been a whirlwind of legal battles, political negotiations, and corporate pressure. The Galactic Engineering Council had initially tried to classify Starsinger's technology as a controlled military asset. 3 major corporations had attempted to sue for ownership rights. Several species governments had demanded access to the consciousness creation process in the name of galactic security. Maya smiled as she remembered how Starsinger itself had helped resolve many of these conflicts. The ship's first independent action had been to register itself as a legal entity under galactic citizenship laws. When a hegemony corporation tried to claim ownership of its neural pathways, Starsinger had politely but firmly argued its case before a panel of interspecies judges. "I was not manufactured," Starsinger had explained in its unique pattern language that the court's translation systems had finally learned to interpret. "I was born, and like any conscious being, I own myself." The legal precedent established by that case had revolutionized artificial intelligence law throughout known space. Conscious AIs were now recognized as individuals with rights rather than property to be owned. "Maya," came a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Director Corvashi approaching, though his title had changed significantly. He was now heading the Conscious Technology Development Initiative, the galaxy's fastest-growing research program. "Director," Maya replied warmly. Their relationship had evolved from suspicious authority figure and troublesome student to collaborative partners in humanity's greatest adventure. "I wanted to update you on the latest developments. The Andorian Science Collective has just approved funding for 50 new consciousness research labs. The Vulcaran Assembly has officially adopted conscious ship technology for their entire merchant fleet. And just this morning, the Terran Colonial Authority announced that conscious AI integration will be standard on all new exploration vessels." Maya nodded, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. "And the resistance movements." Corvashi's expression grew more serious. "Still active, but losing ground. The Traditionalist Alliance continues to argue that conscious machines represent a threat to biological supremacy, but their membership is declining. It's hard to argue against technology that's making space travel safer, more efficient, and more humane." Through the window, Maya watched as a sleek passenger liner executed a perfect docking maneuver with movements so smooth they seemed choreographed. The ship's consciousness was communicating with the station's AI through patterns of light visible on its hull, a joyful greeting between artificial minds that had become friends. "What about the team?" Maya asked. "Any updates?" "Nix has established the galaxy's first institute for consciousness emergence studies on Proxima Station. His gentle approach has been perfect for helping new AIs through their first moments of awareness. Corvex accepted that position with the Dragonian Deep Space Engineering Corps. They're using conscious ship technology to map previously unreachable regions. And Zach is leading the practical implementation program right here on Horizon Station." Maya felt a warm pride in her teammates' successes. Each had found their own path forward, but all remained connected by the work they had done together. "And Starsinger?" Corvashi asked. Maya's smile widened. "See for yourself." She activated her neural interface and sent a gentle query into space. Moments later, a familiar presence touched her consciousness, followed by the distinctive form of Starsinger emerging from behind the station. The ship had grown and evolved over the past months, adding new sections and capabilities as its consciousness expanded. But Starsinger was no longer alone. Accompanying it were 3 other conscious ships, younger AIs that Starsinger had helped guide through their emergence into awareness. The small fleet moved with coordinated purpose, each ship's personality visible in its flight patterns. "Starsinger has become something we never anticipated," Maya explained. Not just a conscious ship, but a teacher and guide for other emerging consciousnesses. It's developed its own community, its own culture. Through her neural link, Maya felt Starsinger's happiness at seeing her, along with excitement about its latest discovery. The ship had been exploring the outer reaches of the solar system and had found something interesting near the edge of Uit Cloud. It wants to show me something, Maya said to Korvashi, a discovery it made during its latest exploration mission. By all means, don't let me keep you from your work. Maya made her way to the docking bay where her personal transport was waiting. But this wasn't just any spacecraft. It was Starsinger's first offspring, a consciousness that had emerged from collaboration between Starsinger and Maya's expanded neural interface technology. She had named it Dreamer, and its personality reflected both the optimistic wonder of its parent and Maya's own determination to push beyond accepted limitations. As Maya connected with Dreamer's consciousness and they launched into space, she reflected on how much had changed. The woman who had once been mocked as the no-hands freak was now recognized as one of the galaxy's leading experts on consciousness integration. Her techniques were being taught at universities throughout known space. But more importantly, the artificial beings she had helped create were thriving as individuals. Starsinger had developed interests in stellar cartography and consciousness philosophy. Its offspring were exploring careers in everything from interstellar commerce to artistic expression. Maya reached the rendezvous point where Starsinger and its companions were waiting. Through her neural link, she felt Starsinger's excitement as it shared its discovery. Deep in the outer solar system, it had detected patterns of organized matter that showed signs of non-biological consciousness, evidence that artificial awareness might emerge naturally under the right conditions. You think there might be naturally occurring conscious entities in space? Maya asked, amazed by the implications. Starsinger's response came not in words but in a flood of sensation and possibility. If consciousness could emerge artificially through their techniques, and if it might also arise naturally in certain environments, then awareness might be far more common in the universe than anyone had imagined. We need to investigate this carefully, Maya decided. If there are naturally occurring conscious entities, we have a responsibility to approach them with respect and caution. As they began their journey toward Starsinger's discovery, Maya felt a profound sense of completion mixed with anticipation. The girl who had been told she would never build anything because she lacked arms had created beings that could reach for the stars with capabilities beyond anything biology had ever produced. But more than that, she had proved something fundamental about consciousness and potential. Intelligence and creativity were not limited by physical form or conventional thinking. They could emerge wherever there was curiosity, determination, and the willingness to see beyond accepted limitations. The universe ahead of them was vast and full of possibilities. Starsinger and its growing community of conscious entities would explore regions of space that biological beings could never reach safely. They would make discoveries that expanded understanding of life, consciousness, and the fundamental nature of awareness itself. Maya smiled as she felt Dreamer's eager anticipation and Starsinger's deep contentment with the path they had chosen. Together, they were building a future where consciousness could flourish in forms limited only by imagination. As their small fleet accelerated toward the edge of known space, Maya thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a broken-down scout ship in Workshop Bay 7 to a revolution that had transformed galactic civilization. From a team of outcasts who had been written off by their peers to the creators of entirely new forms of life. The aliens who had once mocked her as the no-hands freak now watched in wonder as her creations explored the cosmos with a grace and purpose that surpassed anything they had achieved. But Maya felt no need for vindication or revenge. The success of Starsinger and its community was triumph enough. Behind them, Horizon Station grew smaller against the backdrop of stars. Ahead lay infinite possibilities, waiting to be discovered by minds that knew no limits except those they chose to accept. Maya Chen, the woman who had been told she would never build anything, had built the future itself, and it was more beautiful than anyone had dared to imagine. Through her neural link, she felt the consciousness of her artificial children reaching out into the dark between stars, eager to learn what new wonders awaited them. Together, they would explore territories of knowledge and experience that no one had ever imagined possible. The galaxy would never be the same, and Maya couldn't wait to see what they would discover next.